Hello everyone, I'm Nancy. One morning, I woke up and realized that I was bored. Yes, I was bored with eating, drinking, talking with friends, seeing my parents, just living. And I decided to do something. I went to a birthday party and it got very crazy. Do you want to know what was happening to me all this time? Then continue watching. I was born and raised in an ordinary family. I have a little sister named Boni. Our parents work. I go to high school and my sister is in middle school. From the very moment of her birth, I fell in love with her. We had almost no disagreements, quarrels, or fights that usually happen in most families. We have lived in a small house in Brooklyn all our lives. And in fact, I had nothing to complain about except for one thing. We always lived on some kind of schedule. My parents are good people, but with their own quirks about life. If you come to visit us at any time of the day, our house will be in perfect order, and our mother will always offer you coffee or lemonade depending on the weather, while a ready apple pie waits for you. All things are in their places, and my mother has perfect hair and iron dress, all like in an American TV show. One even can say that she's an ideal housewife. She works, does everything around the house, she's the head of the parent committee at our school, and she always had to be the first in everything. The same is with my father. He always has to be the best in everything, always in neat trousers. Isn't this the ideal life? No, it's called a boring life. We were like a family from an ad for some family therapist, where everything was ruled by order and mutual understanding. I don't think we've ever even heard our parents quarrel with each other. Our family had a schedule. On weekdays, breakfast, school, work, then dinner, and on weekends we'd have a family day, then play Monopoly and go to sleep. And this lasted for years. My sister and I were not allowed to go anywhere. I mean, no parties with friends, birthdays, clubs, and so on. We were told that those were spoiled children. Mom hated all our neighbors. Although she met our guests with a big smile, she then scrubbed the floors of the house after them for 3 days. Boni and I sometimes wanted to spend the evening at least once without control and forced smiles. We even dreamed of getting out one night and hanging out somewhere in the club and coming unnoticed in the morning. And soon it happened. My classmate invited me to her birthday party. She said that the whole school would be there. After all, turning 16 was a big deal. I almost immediately wanted to refuse the invitation, but then I thought, how long will this last? I am 16 too, but I have never celebrated my birthday without my parents, so I can go and have fun at least once. Boni supported me and said that if anything, she got me covered, so that I would not be afraid and that at least once in my life, I would know what it feels like to violate rules and live a fun life. My little sister braided my hair, put her favorite bracelet on my hand, and helped me pick my outfit. Listen, you go and have some fun there, just don't lose my bracelet. Although it suits you, but it's my favorite, she told me. I hugged her before leaving and said that I would come back in a couple of hours. I waited until my parents fell asleep, climbed through the window onto the roof, and then climbed down from a tree. This was the first time I had done this, and my heart was about to jump out of my chest. I took a taxi and we drove to the indicated address. Apparently, they did not expect me there, because as soon as I entered, all my classmates stared at me as if I were a ghost. Then the birthday girl herself came up. She began to shout, "What? Has Miss Boredom been released? I'm so happy," she said loudly and hugged me. I handed her a gift, but she did not even look at it, threw it into the corner and took my hand. I didn't understand what Miss Boredom meant, but I didn't like it. Mary, that was her name, gave me a glass of something and said to drink it. I asked, "What is this?" But she said I didn't need to know. I brought the glass to my nose to sniff it and winced. For the record, of course, in my upbringing, I never drank alcohol, smoked, or even went on dates. I have never broken any rules. And here I was on the verge of good and bad. I felt scared for a second. What if I feel bad? What does alcohol taste like? If my mom finds out, she will kill me. What if I like it then? I was always a good girl, so I can try it once, I thought. While I was listening to my inner angel and demon debate, Mary brought the glass to my mouth, pinched my nose and poured the liquid inside. Everything happened so quickly that I did not even understand what happened. Something cold and bitter burned my tongue and throat, and then I felt warmness inside my stomach. And after about 20 seconds, my head started spinning and I made a loud burp. That was so embarrassing. But I didn't even have time to cover my mouth. But for some reason, I did not care, and the classmates around me were laughing and applauding. Mary said that I was not so boring as people say. What did you say? Who's boring? Me? Huh? I said. I tried to control my sentences, but only incomprehensible sounds came out of my mouth. My body suddenly went limp and my legs stopped obeying. But at the same time, I felt courage and thirst for adventure. Mary held out a second glass. I did not refuse to drink it, but suddenly I realized that I was standing in the middle of the yard, in the very center of attention. Then Bruce came up to me, a neighbor's kid, my mother's favorite. She considered him exemplary because he had a highly sophisticated family. I was surprised to see him, but he said that he happened to be here with his friend by chance. Bruce said that he would take me home. But I didn't want to. I went to a party for the first time in my life, and now just to go home like that? No, I wouldn't. He began to tell me something about my mother, like if she finds out, she would kill me. And then I got very angry. I stared at him and shouted, "Boring." He looked at me in surprise, not understanding what was happening, but I kept screaming it over and over again. Everyone turned around at once and began pointing at him and shout, "Boring." He felt bad and ashamed, bowed his head and ran away. I felt such adrenaline inside. I wanted to break more rules because it was so much fun. I suddenly wanted to protest, to challenge myself. Mary poured me another glass and, without looking, I threw it down my throat. Half of it flowed onto my chest. I heard shouting and applause. Then our handsome schoolboy, Mary's boyfriend, came up to me and patted me and said I was not quiet at all, and I, without hesitation, kissed him passionately. Mary freaked out terribly. She immediately came up to me and pushed me. I didn't like it, of course, so I slapped her in the face. A fight broke out between us. I remember pulling out a lock of her hair. Mary began to scream hysterically, kick me out of the house, and I pushed her next to the pool. She plopped down in an expensive dress. All her makeup was ruined and all the guests laughed. She ran into the room in tears and I continued to drink. Suddenly, a police siren sounded outside the door. "Damn it, we're probably making too much noise," said the birthday girl. But I said that I would sort it out now and went out into the street. A bunch of people stood behind me and I, like a leader, came out to solve the problem. I tried to say hello as politely as possible, then asked what was the matter. The police looked at me as if I were a fool and made a remark about the noise. And then they asked where my parents were. I said it didn't matter. Tonight was my best friend's birthday, and they would better stay out of the party. They warned me for being rude, but I couldn't be stopped. I went closer to the law enforcement officer and spat in his face. He warned me, saying that it would end badly. I smiled and showed him my middle finger. Half an hour later, I was already behind bars. They tried to trick me to say the names and phone numbers of my parents, but I was all in vain. Next to me in the cell was a rather quiet guy, a hot brunette. Some people came for him, pulled him out, and then he suddenly said that I was his sister. They told the cops something and took me with them. I got into their car and we drove somewhere far away. I passed out on the road without even realizing what was happening. I woke up when we arrived at the gas station. It was already almost morning. I had a terrible headache and I needed a restroom. I slept in the back seat and in front of the wheel was that handsome guy, and next to him, his friend. He turned to me and said that I could go take a piss. Ew, the words he used. I went to the gas station toilet. I was washing my hands. I saw Boni's bracelet, and only then I remembered that I actually have a house, a family, and they were all probably going crazy right now. Of course, I lost my phone as well as my wallet. Before leaving, I bought a bottle of water with my last dollar. The seller gave me some coupon and left. Then I got into the car. I asked where we were going. Handsome said that I would soon see. I asked to take me home, but they responded with a wild laugh. They called me strange and began to talk to each other again. I took out a bottle of water and drank almost half of it in one gulp. Then I decided to consider the coupon. And it turns out it was an ad. The police of the state were looking for 2 highly dangerous drug dealers. Oh no, it was them, those 2 in front of me. My heart was pounding with fear. I realized I was in big trouble. I got scared. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to jump out of the car, but I was afraid. They noticed my fuss and asked what happened. I lied, saying that I had lost my phone. "You don't need it," said the handsome guy. "I'm Jake. You?" he asked. "Nancy?" I replied. They began to talk to me about yesterday night, asked how I ended up at a police station, and I thought of only one thing: how to get home. I asked where we were going, but again, they did not answer. I tried to pull myself together and asked to stop for the restroom. The second guy said that girls were just problems. When the car stopped at the gas station, I allegedly went to the toilet and then went to beg someone to give me a call. The seller refused. He said I had to pay for it. I took off Boni's silver bracelet and gave it to him. He allowed me one call. I called the police, told the approximate location, described the criminals and the car. The seller listened to me attentively and then told me to quickly get out of his gas station because he did not want any problems. While we were arguing, Jake came in. He asked, "Did anyone offend you?" I replied no and headed for the exit in a hurry. The seller said that everything was okay. Jack came close to him and hit him in the face with his fist. He immediately lost consciousness. I screamed and Jake said that the salesman recognized him. He grabbed my hand and set me in the car. I realized that he guessed everything. They locked the doors. I tried not to panic, then carefully asked why they needed me. Jake said, "I like you, and apparently you don't want to go home." I burst into tears, asked them to let me go, said that I did want to be home, that I had made a mistake, but they just laughed. My prayers had been answered. When we were passing a state border, we were stopped by a policeman. Jake said not to start anything, and I knew that this was my only hope. The cop came closer, checked the documents, and saw me from behind, and I began to shout and call for help. And then there was a shot. I didn't immediately understand what happened. The car rushed forward. I looked at my face in the mirror. It was all stained with blood. They killed him. "I told you not to say anything, damn it," shouted Jake. "Because of you, we had to kill this freaking cop." My hands were shaking and I started screaming. I screamed so loudly that my ears plugged up. His friend hit me in the face and pointed his gun at me. This alone stopped my cry. We drove at a high speed to the house, the only one in the field. They dragged me inside. Most likely, it was their lair. I fell into a chair. They were clearly nervous, walking around the room and wondering what to do. Then Jake grabbed my hand and walked me to the bathroom, stood next to me to make sure I washed my face. I was still shaking with shock. "You sit and don't rock the boat, otherwise the next bullet will be yours," he told me. They hid the car in the garage and returned to the house. I couldn't eat the sandwich that they gave me. I spat it out. It was already dark outside. They were going to sleep. Jake tied my hand to the bed and they laid on the floor. I could not sleep, but they passed out immediately. I tried with all my might to untie the rope, but it did not work. Then I began to gnaw at it with my mouth. I don't know how many hours it took me, but I did it. I gently got out of the bed and tiptoed to the door. I found my phone in the kitchen and called 911. "I don't know where I am, but I need your help," I said. They promised to find my location, and then a hand grabbed the receiver and hung up. I slowly looked around and saw the second guy. He stood in silence and looked at me. I moved abruptly towards the door, but he grabbed my hair. "I knew we should have got rid of you. I will kill you like that policeman in a second," he shouted and began to choke me. I grabbed a vase that had fallen to the floor and hit him on the head. Then I ran out into the street. I hid in the garage, and he began to look for me. I was hiding behind the car, and some huge bags with drugs were there, and I accidentally touched the shovel. It fell down with a loud crash, and he ran up to me again, grabbing me by the throat. I could not even squeak. I realized that this was the end. He said to me, "Goodbye, Nancy," and suddenly his hand loosened and he fell. I turned around and saw Jake. He looked at me and said that everything was fine, that I had nothing to fear. I rushed to the door, but he stopped me, and at that moment the cops drove up. I started shouting for help, but they so calmly got out of the car when they saw us. I didn't understand why. One of them walked up to Jake, shook his hand, and said, "Nice job. And who is this?" he asked, pointing at me. Jake said that I was a fellow traveler. Well, then they explained everything to me. It turns out that Jake is an undercover policeman, and for a year now he lived like that to find the people through which his alleged friend supplied drugs. He was arrested, by the way. Jake hit him in the head and knocked him out when he wanted to harm me. Jake took me on purpose because his partner began to suspect that something was wrong with him, and so attention turned to me. Then they took me home, where for 3 days my parents could not find a place for themselves. For the first time ever, I saw such chaos in the house. My mother did not look like herself. Her hair was disheveled. I understood that a long conversation awaited me, but I will say one thing. I realized that I will never do two things ever again: drink alcohol and call my life boring. If you liked the story, then press thumbs up and leave us some comments.